As I mentioned, my name is Frode Drønen, which is pronounced Drøn, but he gave it a good shot. I will be here showing off my drawings. As you can see, I've been attending drawing classes, been attending, not mastering, so bear with me. I will start by showing this picture, which I do almost in every presentation I do, because when TV2 started back in 1992, and with the streaming services about 2001 and going forward to a SVOD model, we always thought about and talked about audiences. How do we reach her as an audience? She is a female, 20 to 29. How do we reach her on a Friday night, on a Sunday evening? But now the game has changed. We need to reach her as a user or as a customer. And that's a totally different ballgame, because when we have reached over 400,000 subscribers on our platform, we cannot have the same approach to targeting our content and marketing to an audience like her. We need to reach her as an individual, because she is paying each month, and she can cancel her subscription and go to another service in a flick of an eye. So the game has really changed, also going from being a broadcaster to what we now call a narrowcaster. So we saw this coming a couple of years ago. Of course, we've been experimenting with the platform, but it's only in the recent year we saw that Sumo was a much more strategic importance of the TV2 media company. So I was tasked a couple of years ago with a bunch of things regarding analytics. How do we understand what's happening? And I thought, what kind of systems do we have? What kind of culture do we have? And how do we go about this? So I will do this presentation a bit of a retrospect on how we've gotten to where we are today. And of course, we didn't have a mapped out plan 3 years ago when we started this, but I think we can sum up now my presentation in 3 points. We have to make data actionable by design. So we need to design our architecture to handle large volume in near real time. So we cannot rely on analytics being done the week after. How was the TV competition last week? We need to do it in near real time. And that's a huge effort in the number of data points we are working on today. The second point is we need to build a learning culture by insights. I've been working in many industries, and I think it's a symptom that people have analytics departments, or they have a specialist kind of crunching the numbers and coming to the management group every month and presenting some reporting. I think we have to shift that model all the way. We are all analysts. We all need to understand the data in order to take the right decision. And that's a giant leap in the culture, but we are working on that. And the last point is the action part, that we cannot rely on the human brains alone to make decisions for 400,000 unique individuals. So we need to understand how to think like a computer. How do we make the world look in numbers so we can automate this and take better decisions? So I will be covering these 3 topics in my presentation, and I will start off where we started. I've been working, as I said, in many industries, and what I've often seen is that many projects you do too big. You try to emphasize on a too big scale when you start out, because you want to please the management group by having a large design on how you want to address analytics or a new ERP system, what have you. So we got the opportunity to just start out somewhere. And the first issue we had is a couple of years ago, when we had some issues covering stream quality, and especially in our live broadcasting online. We needed to understand what was happening there. So we started off by looking at the log files from our origin server and the CDN. do we get any information on the root cause of, is this the CDN, or is this file or this format that is, we only knew that the customer were complaining. So we had to really dig into the log files and try to understand the quality aspect and the root cause of this. So after doing some experimentation, we came across the Elastic Stack, or the ELK stack as it was known at that time. And we took the log file and we inserted it through Logstash into Elastic and used Kibana to look at the data. And it worked pretty fine. This is what Elastic really shines at. We take a lot of data, convert it into JSON, and put it into a document database that is the industry standard for searching and indexing documents. And this number is from where this guy made Sumo a lot of money, because this guy here came in. So on the 22nd of December last year, we had a record of 1.5 billion JSON documents and log files in 24 hours. So we had to build a huge data pipeline in order to kind of pull all these log messages through our system. And I think we now scale up to about 30,000 messages per second that we can ingest into our platform. But when we worked on this, we said that we need this much hardware to just look at some basic log files on 404s and 200s, AOK, and a percentage that is pretty much the most important thing. So we are paying huge money for of course, important analytics, but when we have this hardware and we have this software, can we use it for other purposes? So then we looked at, we are using Conviva for kind of tracking what the user does in our players. So we got the file each night from them when the session was closed for the day, to understand what the user behavior was. So can we ingest those files, the CSV file, let's convert them to JSON and see what happens. So when we worked on that, we saw that the standard file from Conviva and what metadata we wanted to have about the viewing was not as easy as a standard weblog kind of structure. So we saw that we needed to adjust the data model along the way. So we saw that let's try to have some microservices written in Go for speed, pulling on message queues for kind of repeating the cycle if we are to alter the data model, then use another microservice to pull it into Elastic. So we tried that, and of course we tried some iterations by using Logstash here, but we saw that we had too many business rules, that it was much more efficient to write our own microservices for doing this. So then we were able to kind of both understand how the client or the user was using our content, and also kind of evolving the maturity of the data model over time, but remaining the history. So if we alter the data model, just let's queue up all the messages that are already in this message queue, alter the business rules here, and we have an updated view of all the history in the data. So this is my architectural slide, of course, hand-painted. But the main concept here is that we do not know what data points that are accessible, what we are using them for, or how do we get those data, let's say, in 6 months or 12 months' time. So we need to be able to move data to whichever system, or do some business logic or some data cleanup along the way. So when we are designing this, so every use case we take on now, we look at where are the data coming from? Do we need to alter some of these microservices here? Does this fan out to different systems? So we can kind of plug into our pipeline system instead of just putting all the data in a data lake and hope it does something magic down there. or as I like to call it, where data goes to die. So we try to make more pipelines so we know how the data flows, because if we know how the data flows, we can easily alter one component here and just kind of reflush all the data through and get the current state in order. So that brings me to the next point, is the insights part, because we have a lot of data. We had the 1.5 billion documents, and we have a lot of domains covered in the business side of this, and we're also using the same principle for all our microservices and app development, both in the Sumo service and also in the technology. So we take all the metrics and servers and networks and what have you, and also ingest all those data points into Elastic. But I will cover now more the business side of this. And I tend to kind of explain why we need all these data. Because in a traditional world, and I've been working for so many years, the waterfall was a good way of doing things, because you knew what was wrong and you knew the solution for it. So you just put up a list of activities, you checked those along the way, and you were finished doing your project. And so Agile came along because we don't really know what the solution to this is. So let's try to increment how we do the development. And then the business side would like to play along, so they called Agile Lean Startup, so they had some buzzword of their own. But Lean Startup and Agile is pretty much the same, because the only difference is that the business side has joined the party. So now we're also covering the unknown. So Sumo is working much on the Lean Startup side, because we don't know how the media landscape will be in 1 year or 2 years or 5 years. And we don't know what kind of content or what kind of services we need, but we need to be able to move at a high speed. So central in the Lean Startup is the test, measure, learn loops and learning cycles. And without data, you cannot do this. So by starting off with the analytics platform, solving a concrete problem, dealing with video quality, we saw that the timing of this was very crucial to where TV2 Sumo was heading. So now we've been calling the platform the analytics platform, and gather all the data surrounding the user and our content, which is from the business side. So we also have an initiative with the media workflow, but we are working from the customer and backwards, and the media workflow is working from TV2 towards the customer. So I'm quite fond of this drawing, because I think that we spend way too little time understanding what data we do have. We rely on some PowerPoint fine slides with the graph going upwards or downwards, but we really don't take the time to really dig into the data. How does the data look like? Do we have good data quality? Do we have outliers in our data sets, and why are those? And what are the medians? And really try to understand what's happening. So using Kibana and a long-going experience in Excel, I really enjoyed using Kibana, because it's so snappy, it's so flexible to really get to know your data. So I think people really should spend more time just kind of getting to know your data, because that's your business. Because when you had a physical store, you saw the customer, you saw the reactions, you saw how many that came and went, but now all digital. You need to really dig into your data to understand. Because what is all happening is we pretty much rely on our gut feeling when we take decision. Of course, we have those nice PowerPoint presentations, but it's basically in the gut. Does this decision, should we buy this TV show? Should we promote this content? Should we do a price commercial? Or what have you, is based on our gut, because the gut is connected to our TV. So this is actually a medicine. I haven't tried it, but it looks quite nice, because we are trying to make the data available for everyone. So everyone in TV2 can access these data. We try to pull it up on screens. We try to teach people how to use these data because we need to adjust their gut feeling so they make better decisions. So one of the examples is that we are measuring the daily usage rates. How many of our subscribers is actually using a program in percentage each day? And of course, this will be quite different on the Premier League product that has 1 or 2 matches each week, and the more reality, the Kardashians or the blogger or what have you. So we also try to measure these on different segments, whether it being what product you have or other aspects of this. We can also track how the content is performing. Do we have the right content? We don't have the budget for Game of Thrones, so we have to make people talk in the sofa, for instance. And here we are measuring how many of our customers in a certain time period have watched this show, how much of that time spent was on this show specifically, how many has just watched this show, and how fresh is this content, how much is viewed within the 7 first days. So of course, when you measure this on different segments, or you take this show versus this show, you get a real sense of how well is our content performing? Are we lacking some content that we need to produce or take into account when planning forward? And also more ad hoc kind of instrumentation, because we have several thousand of assets on our service, but when you are doing the campaigning or the social media posting, you need simple access to, like here I've selected love, and what kind of tags are surrounding love, how many shows do we have, how many movies do we have, so you can easily just get to know the content in a different way. Personally, I would like this as a navigation on Sumo, but that's just me. So but of course, this is the insights part, where we are just the gut feeling. So the next part is trying to get the machine to do the work. Let's try to move towards a segment of 1. Could we use all these data points and saying that user A, B, and C is in different segments or have different attributes that we have to use? So this is our primary focus now in 2019. And we are looking at data sources from the video delivery. Do you experience bad quality on your service? What are your viewing habits? What are your demographics? What does your subscription look like? How do you use the apps? And using this for relevancy, for marketing, and for customer support. So I think now the analytics platform is much more of a data integration hub than an analytics platform per se, but you get Kibana on top of your data, so you have the analytics capability alongside the integration part. So an example of how we try to automate this thing is that we try to help the customer service that sometimes things happen with your subscriptions. And this is an example where a user has lost access to the service, but the subscription hasn't been stopped for some reason. So we identify which order this is, so the customer service department can correct this before the user loses access or notice that he has lost access to the service. So this is one example where we just use the data flow and put an automation microservice to just make these kind of Slack integrations here. And another thing we're working on now is making the analytics platform a microservice kind of clustering the viewing habits, or are you a reality lover or a sports lover or both, or don't you fit into any of these categories? So when we do promotion of our content, they can easily say that this should override everybody should see this. Maybe it's an important news event. This segment should see this, and this segment should see these things. And if there's any more room left, just pick from this pool here. So we are gradually moving towards a hybrid of making, of course, automatic movie recommendations that we have on collaborative filtering and such, and also having our curating team to be able to more specifically target our audience. Which brings it back to her. Are we moving towards getting to know her and making better service, providing better content for her? I think we are definitely on the right track here, because now we are able, both as an organization, to have access to all these data, to understand that people are different. And also the kind of numbers, whether it being which genre the user likes to see, and how often, the viewing habits, what kind of platform, what kind of apps are they using, so we can kind of automate this thing. And of course, this is all in compliance with GDPR for those who are wondering of these things. And you can, of course, get these data for yourself. So I think the road ahead is moving towards us being able to kind of digest all this information and adjusting our gut feeling, and also trying to know where we should automate the process and where we should be kind of a commercial broadcaster with we have our own local production, which Netflix and HBO and the likes don't have. So we have to differentiate and not being all automated like Netflix, but we have to kind of find a hybrid where we could be cost-effective on what we're doing, and also kind of being relevant to our customers, so they are willing to use our services and pay for our services. So that pretty much sums up it all, and thank you for my time.